The scent of lemon polish burned my nostrils as I scrubbed the marble floor on my hands and knees, watching droplets of sweat fall from my forehead and dissolve into the soapy water. My lower back screamed in protest, a dull ache that had become as familiar as my own heartbeat over the past 3 months. The Castellano estate stretched endlessly around me, 40 rooms of cold perfection, each one demanding my attention, my labor, my invisible presence. I was a ghost here. That's what Mrs. Kovac, the head housekeeper, had made abundantly clear on my first day. You clean what needs cleaning. You touch nothing that doesn't. You see nothing. You hear nothing. And most importantly, you never, ever speak unless spoken to. Her thin lips had barely moved as she delivered these commandments, her eyes as cold as the winter pressing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The pay was obscene, triple what I'd made at the hotel downtown. Enough to finally chip away at the mountain of medical debt that had buried me after Mom's cancer treatments. Enough to maybe, someday, afford a life that didn't involve choosing between electricity and groceries. So I scrubbed. I polished. I became invisible. The East Wing was my territory today, a section of the mansion I'd only entered twice before. As I pushed my cleaning cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking against the hardwood, I noticed how the afternoon light filtered through the silk curtains differently here. Softer, almost warm. The portraits lining the walls showed generations of Castellanos, their dark eyes following my movements with painted judgment. I'd seen him only once since I started working here. Dante Castellano. The name alone made the other staff members lower their voices to whispers. He'd walked past me in the main corridor 3 weeks ago, surrounded by 4 men in dark suits, their hands never far from their jackets. I'd pressed myself against the wall, eyes down, heart hammering, as the scent of expensive cologne and something darker, gunpowder maybe, or violence made tangible, had washed over me. He hadn't looked at me. I was furniture, a fixture, exactly as I should be. But I'd looked at him. Just a glimpse. A stolen moment of curiosity that I immediately regretted. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 32, 33, with jet black hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from the same marble I spent my days polishing. Beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Dangerous, precise, cold. His jawline was sharp enough to cut, and even in that brief glance, I'd felt the weight of the power he carried like a second skin. The staff whispered about him in the kitchen during our brief lunch breaks. About the family business that everyone knew meant organized crime. About his wife, dead 2 years now in a car accident that nobody really believed was an accident. About his twin daughters who never smiled anymore, never played, never did anything but drift through these halls like small ghosts in expensive dresses. I reached the end of the East Wing and paused. A door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling through the crack. Children's laughter. No, not laughter. Crying. Soft, broken sobbing that made my chest tighten with a familiar ache. I shouldn't. Mrs. Kovac's rules echoed in my head, but my feet moved forward anyway, drawn by a pull I couldn't explain. Maybe it was because I'd once been a child who cried alone in rooms that were too big and too empty. Maybe it was because invisibility sometimes felt like a superpower and a curse in equal measure. I pushed the door open just enough to peer inside. The room was a paradise of pastels and plush toys, everything 2 5-year-old girls could want. But the twins sat in the center of an elaborate play area, surrounded by untouched dollhouses and pristine stuffed animals, tears streaming down their identical faces. They wore matching white dresses with pink ribbons, their dark curls perfectly arranged. Their small hands clutched together as if holding on to each other was the only thing keeping them anchored to the world. My heart shattered. I glanced down the hallway. Empty. The staff would be changing shifts soon, and Mrs. Kovac always retreated to her office for exactly 17 minutes at 3 o'clock. I had time. Maybe. I slipped into the room, closing the door softly behind me. "Hey," I whispered, kneeling a few feet away from them, not wanting to startle them. "What's wrong?" 2 pairs of dark eyes, their father's eyes, turned to me. One twin spoke, her voice trembling. We can't remember." "Can't remember what, sweetheart?" "How to play." The second twin's lower lip quivered. Nanny Rosa used to show us, but she left. And Nanny Margaret is scared of us, and Daddy is always angry or sad or gone, and we forget how games work. Something inside me cracked open. These children, drowning in luxury, had forgotten joy, had forgotten that they were allowed to be children. I looked around the room and spotted a collection of building blocks in the corner, still in their packaging, never opened. An idea sparked. "Well," I said, sitting cross-legged on the plush carpet, "I happen to be an expert in remembering. Want to learn a secret?" They nodded, moving slightly closer, their tears drying on their cheeks. I opened the blocks and began building a simple tower. The secret is that playing isn't something you have to remember, it's something you feel. "Here, you take this red block. What does it want to be?" "Want to be?" One twin tilted her head. "Everything wants to be something. That's what my mom used to tell me. This red block? Maybe it wants to be a castle tower, or a rocket ship, or a giant robot's toe. What do you think?" A tiny smile ghosted across one twin's face. "A castle tower. Perfect. And you?" I turned to the other twin. A bridge for princesses to cross? Even better. Now we're building an adventure." For the next hour, I forgot about Mrs. Kovach's rules. I forgot about the mountain of debt, and the ache in my back, and the way I'd trained myself to be invisible. I taught them games I'd played as a child. Simple things like making the blocks talk to each other in silly voices, creating stories about brave princesses who saved themselves, building towers just to knock them down and laugh at the chaos. And they laughed. God, they laughed. Real laughter that filled the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. I showed them how to make a fort from couch cushions, how to have races with toy cars while making engine noises, how to play pretend without needing rules or instructions. I got down on the floor with them, not caring that my uniform was wrinkling, not caring that I'd have to scrub twice as hard tomorrow to make up for lost time. One twin, Isabella, she told me shyly, climbed into my lap as we read a storybook with dramatic voices. The other, Julia, fell asleep against my shoulder, her tiny hand clutching my apron. I was singing a soft lullaby, the Italian one my mother used to sing to me when I felt it. The air changed, grew heavier, charged with something electric and dangerous. I looked up. He stood in the doorway, Dante Castellano, surrounded by two men in black suits, their hands hovering near their weapons. But my eyes locked on him, and time seemed to fracture into slow motion. His expression was unreadable, a mask of stone, but his eyes were molten, burning with something I couldn't name, shock, fury, something else that made my stomach drop to the floor. I'd made a terrible mistake. Isabella stirred in my lap, and Julia blinked awake against my shoulder. They saw their father and their bodies went rigid, the joy draining from their faces like water through a sieve. "Daddy," Isabella whispered, and the fear in her voice made me want to weep. I carefully disentangled myself from the girls, rising to my feet on shaking legs. My mouth was dry. My heart was trying to claw its way out of my chest. "Mr. Castellano, I can explain. I heard them crying, and I just thought, out." His voice was quiet, lethally quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. One of the men stepped forward, reaching for my arm, but Dante raised a single finger. The man froze. "Not you." Dante's eyes never left mine, dark and fathomless. "Them." The two bodyguards exchanged glances but obeyed immediately, filing out of the room and closing the door behind them. The click of the lock sounded like a gunshot. We were alone. Him, me, and his daughters, who had rediscovered how to smile. He took a step forward, then another. Each movement was controlled, predatory. A wolf approaching cornered prey. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My mind raced through possibilities. Would I just be fired? Or would I disappear the way people whispered about? The ones who crossed the Castellano family. He stopped inches from me, close enough that I could smell cedar and smoke and something metallic. Close enough to see the muscle ticking in his jaw. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. His eyes dropped to his daughters, still sitting on the floor, surrounded by blocks and books and the remnants of play. Then back to me. "How did you do that?" His voice was rough, like gravel scraping against silk. I blinked. What? They haven't laughed in 2 years. His hand rose and I flinched, but he only gestured to the room. Nannies, child psychologists, specialists from Switzerland. Nothing. And you... He stopped, his jaw clenching. "You walk in here and in an hour." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Isabella stood up, moving to her father's side. "Daddy, she taught us how to play. She made the blocks have adventures. She sang us Mama's song." Dante's entire body went rigid. "What?" "The Italian lullaby," Julia added quietly. "The one Mama used to sing." His eyes found mine again, and this time there was something raw in them. Something that looked like pain and fury and desperate, aching need all tangled together. "What's your name?" he demanded. Emma Rossi." My voice came out as barely a whisper. "Emma Rossi." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting each syllable. Then he stepped even closer, invading my space completely, his presence overwhelming. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" I shook my head, tears burning behind my eyes. "You've made yourself indispensable." His hand rose again, and this time his fingers brushed my chin, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. His touch was surprisingly gentle, but the possession in his eyes was anything but. "And nothing indispensable leaves this house. Do you understand?" I didn't. Not really. But I nodded anyway, trapped in his stare like a butterfly pinned to velvet. He pulled out a phone, one of 3 clipped to his belt, and pressed a single button. "Mrs. Kovac, Emma Rossi is no longer your cleaning staff. She answers to me now. Send her belongings to the East Wing. Effective immediately." He ended the call without waiting for a response. My knees nearly buckled. "Mr. Castellano, you'll live here. In the room adjacent to my daughters, you'll care for them, teach them, make them laugh." Each word was a command, absolute and unchallengeable. "You'll eat with us. You'll become part of this family. But I'm just a maid." "You were a maid." His thumb traced my jawline, sending shivers down my spine. "Now you're something else entirely. Something mine." The way he said mine made something dark and dangerous unfurl in my chest. Isabella tugged on my hand. "You're staying? Really staying?" I looked down at her hopeful face, then at Julia's matching expression, then back at Dante's burning gaze. I'd come here to be invisible, to disappear into these walls and earn enough money to survive. Instead, I'd just become the most visible person in a very dangerous man's world. And from the way he was looking at me, like I was prey and salvation, and something forbidden all at once, I knew my life would never be simple again. "Yes," I heard myself whisper. "I'm staying." His smile was slow, predatory, and absolutely terrifying. "Good. Because now that I've found you, Emma Rossi, I'm never letting you go." The room they gave me was 3 times the size of my entire apartment. I stood in the doorway at midnight, my pathetic duffel bag clutching every possession I owned, feeling impossibly small in my trembling hands. Cream-colored walls, a 4-poster bed with silk sheets, a private bathroom with heated marble floors. Windows overlooking the east gardens where security lights cast long shadows across perfectly manicured hedges. This wasn't a servant's quarters. This was luxury I had no right to touch. A connecting door stood to my left, the twins' room. I could hear their soft breathing through the wood, peaceful now in a way Mrs. Kovac had whispered they hadn't been in years. I'd done that. Somehow, accidentally, I'd given them back something everyone else had failed to restore, and Dante Castellano had noticed. I pressed my palm against my chest, trying to slow my racing heart. The way he'd looked at me in that playroom, like I was something precious and dangerous simultaneously, had branded itself into my memory. His fingers on my jaw, his voice wrapping around the word mine like a chain I hadn't agreed to wear. I should run, pack this pathetic bag, and disappear into the night before whatever this was became something I couldn't escape. But the twins' laughter echoed in my mind. Isabella's small hand in mine, Julia's sleepy weight against my shoulder. Two little girls who'd forgotten how to be children, who'd looked at me like I held magic in my ordinary hands. I couldn't abandon them. Even if staying meant stepping into a world where men carried guns under tailored suits and family business meant blood on expensive marble. Sleep didn't come easy. Every sound made me flinch. Footsteps in the hallway, doors closing, the distant murmur of male voices discussing things I didn't want to understand. Around 3 a.m, I finally drifted off, only to dream of dark eyes and dangerous smiles, and hands that held me prisoner without ever touching me. Morning arrived with soft knocking on the connecting door. "Emma? Are you awake?" Isabella's voice, tentative and sweet. I stumbled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes because I'd been too afraid to undress in this place that wasn't mine. "Come in, sweetheart." Both twins entered, already dressed in matching pale blue dresses, their hair brushed and ribboned, but their faces were uncertain, as if they feared yesterday had been a dream. "You're really here," Julia breathed. "I'm really here." I knelt down, opening my arms, and they crashed into me with the force of small hurricanes. Their grip was tight, desperate, the hold of children who'd lost too much already. We ate breakfast in the twin sitting room, a space I was only just discovering existed, complete with a small table and chairs painted with flowers. A staff member I didn't recognize brought trays loaded with fresh fruit, pastries, hot chocolate, and scrambled eggs so perfectly prepared they looked like art. "We usually eat alone," Isabella explained, picking at her food. "Daddy eats in his office or not at all. Nanny Margaret brings our food and leaves," Julia added. "She doesn't stay." The loneliness in their voices carved into my chest. "Well, I'm staying. We'll eat together every morning, okay? And maybe we can plan adventures for the day." Their faces lit up like candles in darkness. We spent the morning exploring their room properly, discovering art supplies that had never been opened, a costume chest filled with princess dresses and pirate hats, a telescope by the window for watching stars. I taught them hand-clapping games and silly songs, and we built an elaborate castle from blocks that stretched across half the floor. Around 11, the door opened without warning. Dante stood there, flanked by a single guard this time, a massive man with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. Both men were dressed in dark suits that probably cost more than a year of my old salary, but it was Dante who commanded every atom of oxygen in the room. In daylight, he was even more devastating. His shirt was crisp white against olive skin, the top 2 buttons undone revealing the hollow of his throat. His hair was still damp from a shower, pushed back from a face that belonged on magazine covers, if those magazines were titled "Dangerous Men Who'll Ruin Your Life." "Daddy!" The twins ran to him, and something in my chest twisted watching this hardened man drop to one knee, gathering his daughters against him with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone who radiated such lethal control. "My angels," he murmured in Italian, pressing kisses to their foreheads. His voice was different with them, softer, with rough edges worn smooth by love. "Are you being good for Emma? She's teaching us everything." Isabella bounced on her toes. "We're building a castle for a dragon princess who doesn't need rescuing because she rescues herself." His eyes lifted to mine over their heads, and the impact of his full attention was like standing too close to a fire. "Is that so?" I stood frozen, acutely aware of how I must look. Hair in a messy bun, wearing jeans and a simple sweater from my bag because all my uniforms were gone. No makeup, no armor against his scrutiny. "They're wonderful students," I managed, my voice barely steady. He stood, his hands gentle on his daughter's shoulders. "Girls, go wash up for lunch. Emma and I need to talk." The twins obeyed immediately, disappearing into their bathroom. The guard stepped outside, closing the door. And suddenly we were alone in a room that felt too small, despite its generous size. Dante moved toward me with that same predatory grace from yesterday. Each step deliberate, controlled. A man who never did anything by accident. "Do you understand what's happening here, Emma?" He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Close enough that his scent, cedar and gunpowder and something uniquely him, wrapped around me like smoke. "I'm taking care of your daughters?" His laugh was dark, humorless. You're doing something no one else could. In 24 hours, you've given them back pieces of themselves I thought were lost forever. His hand rose, and I held my breath as his fingers traced the curve of my cheek with impossible gentleness. Do you know what that makes you? I shook my head, unable to speak, unable to move. Dangerous. His thumb brushed my lower lip, and heat flooded through me in a way that should have been terrifying. The most dangerous thing in my world right now, because I would burn cities to keep you here. Mr. Castellano, Dante. His voice dropped lower, intimate and commanding. You live in my house now. You care for the most precious things in my existence. You'll call me Dante. That's not appropriate. Nothing about this is appropriate, Piccola. The Italian endearment rolled off his tongue like honey and venom mixed. But appropriate stopped mattering the moment I saw you holding my daughters like they were treasures instead of burdens. His other hand rose, and suddenly I was caged between his palms, his thumbs tracing my jawline with a reverence that made my knees weak. His eyes held mine with an intensity that felt physical, like he was reading every secret I'd ever kept. I did background on you last night, he said softly. Emma Rossi, 26 years old. Mother died 8 months ago from cancer. Medical debt totaling $243,000. No other family. Working 3 jobs before taking the position here. His thumb pressed gently against my racing pulse. You came to my house desperate, invisible, expecting nothing. Shame burned through me. He knew everything. Every failure. Every desperate choice. And instead, he continued, his voice dropping to barely a whisper, you gave my daughters their childhood back. You sang them their mother's lullaby. A song I haven't heard in 2 years because it hurt too much. His forehead lowered until it almost touched mine, his breath warm against my skin. Tell me, Emma, what am I supposed to do with you? Let me do my job? I whispered. Let me help the girls and stay out of your way? His smile was sharp, dangerous. You think you could ever stay out of my way now? His hand slid down to cup my face fully, tilting it up. You walk through my house and make broken things whole. You carry light in your hands like it's nothing. You're already in my way, Piccola. You're blocking every path except the one that leads to you. I don't understand. My voice broke. Yesterday, I was scrubbing your floors. Yesterday, I was a man going through motions. Today, I'm a man who's found something worth protecting. His eyes searched mine, fierce and possessive. My daughters need you. And what my daughters need, I provide. No matter the cost. I'm not a thing to be provided, no. You're a woman who's going to stay in this house, safe and cared for, because leaving would destroy the only happiness my girls have known since their mother died. His grip tightened fractionally. And because the thought of you walking away makes something violent wake up inside me. I should have been terrified. Every rational part of me screamed warnings about dangerous men and golden cages and possessive declarations that had no place in reality. But trapped in his gaze, feeling the barely restrained intensity radiating from him, I felt something else entirely. Something that had been dormant for so long I'd forgotten its name. Wanted. Protected. Seen. The debt, he said suddenly. It's gone, paid in full as of an hour ago. My breath stopped. What? You can't... I already did. Matter of fact. Absolute. You're under my protection now, Emma. That means your burdens become mine to eliminate. No arguments. Tears burned my eyes. $250,000 gone. The weight that had been crushing me for months, making me choose between dignity and survival, erased with a phone call from a man who controlled more money than I could fathom. Why? I choked out. Why would you do that? His smile was sad, almost vulnerable beneath the dangerous exterior. Because my daughters laugh when you're near them. Because you're the first person in 2 years who's looked at them and seen children instead of tragic figures. Because... He stopped, his jaw clenching as if holding back words that wanted to escape. Because you're mine to protect now. Whether you've agreed to it or not, the possessiveness should have repelled me. Instead, it wrapped around my broken places like armor I didn't know I needed. I don't know how to be whatever you think I am, I whispered. You don't have to know. You just have to stay. His hands gentled, thumbs wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling. Stay with my daughters. Let me keep you safe. Let me... His voice roughened. Let me have this one good thing in a life built on darkness. The bathroom door opened, and the twins emerged, their timing perfect and terrible. Dante stepped back immediately, creating appropriate distance, but his eyes stayed locked on mine, a promise and a warning, and something burning that I didn't dare name. Lunch is ready downstairs, he told the girls, his voice shifting back to that softer tone reserved for them. Emma will bring you. Aren't you eating with us? Julia's disappointment was palpable. Something flickered across his face. Conflict, longing, fear. Not today, Angel. Daddy has work. Work. The kind that required armed guards and multiple phones, and the cold expression that slid over his features like a mask, burying the vulnerability I just witnessed. He left without another word, but the air still hummed with his presence, with the weight of everything he'd said and everything he'd left unspoken. Isabella took my hand. He likes you. Sweetheart, I don't think... He does, Julia insisted. He looked at you the way he used to look at Mama, before she went away. My heart stuttered, caught between terror and something dangerously close to hope. I'd come to this mansion to be invisible, to earn money and disappear into walls. Instead, I'd become the center of a dangerous man's obsessive protection, the light in his daughter's darkness, and something he'd claimed as his own, with a certainty that left no room for argument, and God help me. I wasn't sure I wanted to fight it anymore. 3 weeks passed in a blur of carefully constructed routine and simmering tension that never quite broke. Mornings belonged to the twins and me. We'd wake early, tangled in blankets on my bed where they'd inevitably migrated during the night, seeking comfort from nightmares they rarely talked about. I'd braid their hair while singing Italian songs my mother taught me, and we'd plan our day over breakfast. Art projects, imaginary games, reading time in the library that sprawled across the mansion's second floor like a cathedral of books. They were blossoming. Isabella's shy giggles became full-throated laughter. Julia started asking questions again. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars go during the day? What makes flowers grow? Simple, beautiful, childish questions that no one had encouraged her to ask in 2 years. But Dante was everywhere, and nowhere simultaneously. He'd appear in doorways without warning, watching us with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. During lunch, he'd sometimes join us, sitting at the small table with his large frame folded into a child-sized chair, listening to his daughter's chatter about dragons and pirates, while his dark eyes tracked my every movement. His hand would brush mine when passing a dish. His knee would press against my thigh under the table. Small touches that felt deliberate, possessive, claiming. Then he'd vanish for days. Business trips, Mrs. Kovac would say with pinched lips, though the armed guards who prowled the mansion's perimeter doubled when he was gone. I'd hear him return in the middle of the night. Footsteps in the hallway, hushed conversations in Italian, sometimes a phone call conducted in that cold, lethal voice that made my stomach clench with fear for whoever was on the receiving end. He'd check on the girls while they slept. I knew because I'd wake to find him standing in the connecting doorway, backlit by hallway lights, his expression unguarded for once. Aching. Tender. Desperate. He never knew I watched him, never knew I saw the way his hands trembled slightly before he'd press kisses to their foreheads, murmuring prayers in Italian that sounded like apologies. And sometimes, after checking on them, he'd stand in my doorway, just stand there, silent. His eyes adjusting to the darkness, finding me in the bed, tracking the rise and fall of my breathing. The first time it happened, terror had frozen me, but he never entered, never spoke. Just watched for long moments before disappearing like smoke, leaving me trembling beneath sheets that suddenly felt too thin. It should have terrified me, this surveillance, this obsessive attention. Instead, it made me hyper-aware of my own body. The way my pulse jumped when he was near, the heat that pooled low in my belly when his eyes darkened while watching me. The dangerous curiosity about what would happen if he ever crossed that threshold. I was beginning to understand what a gilded cage felt like. Beautiful. Comfortable. Impossible to escape even if I wanted to. And I wasn't sure I wanted to anymore. The 4th week began with unexpected sunshine and Julia's birthday announcement. "We'll be 6 next Saturday," she declared over breakfast, bouncing in her seat. "Will you make it special, Emma, please?" My heart clenched. "Of course, sweetheart. What would make it special for you? A party." Isabella clapped her hands, "with decorations and games and a cake with pink flowers." "And friends," Julia added. Then her face fell. "But we don't have friends." The sadness in those words shattered something inside me. These girls, isolated in a fortress of wealth and danger, had been too wrapped up in grief to maintain friendships, had been taught that the world was dangerous, that people couldn't be trusted, that staying behind walls was survival. "Then we'll make it the best party for just us," I promised. "You, me, Isabella, and your dad will make it magical." I found Dante in his office that afternoon, a space I'd avoided until now, understanding instinctively that it was his domain, his war room, not meant for civilians who still believed in clean hands and simple morality. 2 guards flanked the door. They knew me by now, had been instructed to let me pass. But their eyes tracked me with the wariness of men who trusted nothing except orders and violence. I knocked. Waited. Enter. The office was exactly what I expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, windows that overlooked the property like a general surveying his kingdom. But it was the wall of monitors behind his desk that made my breath catch. Security feeds showing every angle of the estate, including several focused on the twins' wing, including one that showed my bedroom door. He'd been watching. Always watching. Dante sat behind a massive mahogany desk, papers spread before him, 3 phones lined up like weapons within reach. He wore a black shirt with sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories I'd never be brave enough to ask about. His hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running fingers through it. He looked tired, dangerous, devastating. His eyes lifted to mine, and the intensity hit like a physical force. "Emma." My name in his voice was becoming an incantation, something that made my knees weak. "What do you need?" I forced myself to focus. "The girl's birthday, next Saturday. I want to make it special for them." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with that unwavering attention that always made me feel simultaneously exposed and protected. "What did you have in mind?" "A party. Just family. Decorations, games, a cake. I'll handle everything, but I wanted your permission first." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that I'd asked rather than assumed. "You don't need my permission for anything involving my daughter's happiness, Piccola. Whatever you want, it's yours." "I'll need a budget." "No." He stood, moving around the desk with that liquid grace that reminded me he was a predator in expensive clothing. "No budget. Spare no expense. If you need the moon wrapped in ribbons, I'll find a way to deliver it." He stopped close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the small scar cutting through his left eyebrow that somehow made him more beautiful. "They've never had a real party," he said quietly. "Their mother died 3 weeks before their 4th birthday. We canceled everything, and last year I was too lost in grief to remember until the day had passed." His hand rose, fingers ghosting along my cheek in that touch that was becoming familiar, addictive. "You think of things I should have remembered. You care about things I failed to protect. You were grieving. You still are. And you?" His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath hitched. "What are you doing, Emma Rossi, besides making yourself essential to every corner of my life?" "Taking care of your daughters. Just my daughters?" His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. "Because I find you in my thoughts constantly. I watch you through cameras when I should be working. I stand in your doorway at night like a stalker, fighting the urge to wake you just to hear your voice." His other hand rose, caging my face between his palms. "Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me I'm alone in this madness." I couldn't. God help me. I couldn't lie when his eyes were burning into mine with such raw need. "I feel it," I whispered. "I shouldn't. But I do." His exhale was shaky, vulnerable. "You should run from me." I'm not a good man, Piccola. My hands are stained with things you can't imagine. I've hurt people. Killed people. I live in a world where violence is currency, and mercy is weakness. His forehead lowered until it touched mine, his breath warm against my lips. But you make me want to be someone different. Someone worthy of the way my daughters look at you, the way you look at them, Dante. I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. Even knowing I'll ruin you, even knowing you deserve better than a monster who can't let you go. His mouth was inches from mine. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. Every nerve ending screamed at me to close the distance, to taste the danger and obsession and desperate need radiating from him. The office door burst open. We sprang apart as Marco, Dante's head of security, the scarred man I'd seen multiple times, entered without ceremony. His face was grim. We have a problem. Vittorio's crew hit one of our warehouses. 3 dead, shipment gone. The transformation was instantaneous. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by the cold, lethal boss whose reputation made grown men shake. Dante's jaw hardened, his eyes went flat, and his entire body shifted into something predatory and terrifying. Lock down the estate. Double the guards on the east wing. His voice was ice and razors. Get everyone in the war room, now. Marco's eyes flicked to me, then back to Dante. The girl goes back to my daughters, protected. If anyone gets within 50 feet of that wing without my explicit permission, shoot them. He turned to me, and for just a second, warmth flickered in his gaze. Go, Emma. Stay with the twins. Don't leave their room until I come for you. What's happening? War, he said simply, my world bleeding into reality. This is why you should run from me, Piccola, because this is what I am. He ushered me out, and suddenly the mansion transformed. Guards appeared from nowhere, moving with military precision. Doors locked, metal shutters descended over windows. The beautiful fortress became exactly what it always had been beneath the surface, a stronghold preparing for siege. I ran to the twins' room, my heart in my throat. They were playing with dolls, oblivious to the danger. I locked the connecting door to my room, then locked the main door to the hallway, just as Dante had taught me in a brief security lesson last week that I'd thought was paranoia. Now I understood. This wasn't paranoia. This was survival. Emma? Isabella looked up, sensing my fear. What's wrong? I forced a smile, kneeling between them. Nothing, sweethearts. Your father just wants us to stay here for a while. Maybe we can practice for your party? Pretend we're princesses locked in a tower, planning our celebration. They bought it because children are resilient and imaginative, and too young to understand that sometimes towers are cages and celebrations are distractions from violence happening in the shadows. We played for hours. I kept my voice steady, my hands calm, even as I heard raised voices downstairs, car engines, footsteps pounding through hallways. Even as gunfire cracked in the distance, maybe on the property, maybe beyond, I couldn't tell. The twins didn't hear it. I'd turned on music, loud and cheerful, drowning out the soundtrack of their father's world. Night fell. Still no Dante. I fed the girls dinner from a tray that appeared at the door, delivered by a guard whose knuckles were bruised and bleeding, put them to bed with extra stories and songs. Lay between them until they fell asleep, their small bodies pressed against mine, seeking comfort from fear they couldn't name, but somehow sensed. Around midnight, the door unlocked. Dante entered silently, and in the dim light from the hallway, I saw darkness painted across him. Not literal blood, he was too careful for that, but the weight of whatever he'd done, whoever he'd hurt, settling on his shoulders like a familiar coat. He stopped at the foot of the bed, staring at us, his daughters safe between my arms, untouched by the violence he'd orchestrated. Are they? His voice cracked. Safe, I whispered. Sleeping. They don't know anything happened. He moved closer, his hand reaching out to stroke Isabella's hair with infinite gentleness. Then Julia's. His eyes lifted to mine, and what I saw there made my chest ache. Gratitude. Torment. Possessive need so intense it bordered on worship. You kept them safe, he breathed. Of course I did. Of course. His laugh was bitter, as if it's simple, As if you didn't just spend hours locked in a room while men tried to breach my property and kill everyone inside. His hand moved to my face, and his fingers were trembling. You should be terrified. You should be demanding I let you go. Should I? I challenged quietly. Would you? No. Simple. Absolute. Terrifying. Never. He leaned down, and his lips brushed my forehead, a kiss that felt like a brand, a promise, a claim I couldn't refuse even if I wanted to. Sleep, Piccola. I'll have guards outside this door until sunrise. You're safe. They're safe. His thumb traced my cheekbone, because I would burn the entire world before I'd let anything touch what's mine. He left before I could respond, melting back into shadows and violence, and the darkness he lived in. I lay awake long after, holding his daughters close, understanding with crystalline clarity that I'd stopped being a maid weeks ago. I'd become something far more dangerous. I'd become essential to a man who would kill to keep me. And God forgive me, I was starting to accept it. The party preparations consumed the next 5 days, offering blessed distraction from the tension that had wrapped around the mansion like barbed wire since the attack. I threw myself into creating magic for 2 little girls who deserved every ounce of joy I could manufacture. The kitchen staff, who'd initially treated me with cool suspicion, warmed when they saw me elbow-deep in flour at 3 a.m, determined to bake the perfect cake myself. Mrs. Kovac even cracked a smile when I accidentally got pink frosting in my hair while trying to pipe roses. You're good for them, she said quietly, watching me work. For the girls. For him. She paused, her weathered hands folding a kitchen towel with precise corners. His wife was kind too, soft in a world that demanded hardness. He loved her desperately, but he couldn't protect her from his own life. Her eyes met mine, sharp and knowing. You remind him of what he lost and what he's terrified to lose again. The words settled into my chest like stones. Dante was everywhere during those 5 days, yet we barely spoke. He'd appear while I decorated the twins' playroom with streamers and balloons, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, watching me stretch on tiptoes to hang glittery stars from the ceiling. His eyes would track every movement, the curve of my waist, the exposed slice of skin when my shirt rode up, the concentration on my face as I tried to make everything perfect. You need help, he'd offer, voice rough. I've got it. Emma, I need to do this myself. For them. He'd nod, understanding something I couldn't articulate. That creating this party was my way of giving them normalcy in a world that had stolen it, that my hands needed to build something beautiful in a house where violence lurked beneath Persian rugs and marble columns. But he'd stay. Always stay. A silent sentinel who'd pull out his phone and conduct business in Italian while I worked, his presence both comforting and unnerving. Sometimes, Marco would appear with urgent whispers, and Dante's expression would shift into that cold mask before he'd leave with promises to return. He always returned, always found his way back to watch me create joy from tissue paper and ribbons. The night before the party, I was hanging the last decoration, a banner reading, "Happy Birthday," in sparkly letters. When the chair I stood on wobbled, strong hands caught my waist, steadying me, and electricity shot through my entire body. Careful, Piccola. Dante's voice was low, dangerous, directly behind me. His hands lingered, thumbs pressing into my hip bones through my thin shirt. Can't have you breaking your neck before tomorrow. I looked down at him, and my breath caught. He'd loosened his tie, unbuttoned his collar, and his hair was disheveled from the fingers I'd watched him run through it obsessively all day. He looked exhausted, stressed, and so devastatingly beautiful it hurt to breathe. I'm fine, I managed. You're always fine, always capable, always giving. His hands tightened fractionally. Who takes care of you, Emma? I take care of myself, not anymore. He lifted me down from the chair with effortless strength, setting me on my feet but not releasing me. We stood chest to chest in the decorated room, surrounded by proof of my dedication to his daughters, and the air between us crackled with everything we'd been avoiding for weeks. You live in my house, under my protection. That means I decide when you're pushing too hard. You don't get to decide. I decide everything here. His hands slid up to cup my face, tilting it up to meet his burning gaze. Everything, Emma. When you eat, when you sleep. Who gets near you? Who touches you? His thumb traced my lower lip, and my knees went weak. Who gets to make you feel things you've been denying since the day I claimed you? You didn't claim me, didn't I? His smile was dark, possessive. You sleep in my house. You care for my children. You wake in the night and check the locks I installed for your safety. You watch me through half-closed eyes when I stand in your doorway, and you don't scream. Don't run. His forehead lowered to mine, his breath ghosting across my lips. You're mine in every way that matters except the one that would make it permanent. And that's my fault, not yours. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why are you holding back if you feel this so strongly? His jaw clenched, and pain flashed through his eyes. Because once I have you completely, there's no going back. You become a target. Anyone who wants to hurt me will come for you. They'll use you as leverage, as a weapon against me. His hands trembled against my skin. My wife died because of what I am. Because she was mine. And my enemies knew destroying her would destroy me. They were right. Understanding crashed over me. You're trying to protect me by keeping distance. Failing miserably, he admitted roughly. Because distance means nothing when I'm obsessed with every breath you take. When I watch you on cameras like a stalker. When I stand in your doorway at night, fighting every instinct that screams at me to wake you, claim you, make you understand that you're mine beyond any rational argument. His confession hung between us, raw and honest and terrifying. What if I don't want protection? I whispered. What if I want... The door burst open, and Isabella and Julia tumbled in wearing matching pajamas, their eyes wide with excitement despite the late hour. We couldn't sleep, Isabella announced. Tomorrow's our birthday. Dante stepped back immediately, creating appropriate distance. But his eyes promised this conversation wasn't finished. You should be in bed, angels. Can Emma tell us a story? Julia pleaded. Please, Daddy. He looked at me, something vulnerable flickering beneath the dangerous exterior. Will you? As if I could refuse these girls anything. Of course. Come on, let's get you tucked in. We settled in their bed, the twins on either side of me, Dante sitting at the foot, his presence overwhelming even in stillness. I told them a story about brave princesses who saved kingdoms and found their own happily ever afters, and their eyes grew heavy with sleep. Daddy? Isabella murmured drowsily. Will you always keep Emma here? Dante's eyes found mine over their heads, and the intensity there stole my breath. Always, Angel. She's family now. She's not going anywhere. Good, Julia whispered. We love her. My heart cracked open. I love you too, sweethearts. What about Daddy? Isabella asked with the brutal honesty of children. Do you love him too? The question hung in the air like suspended glass, beautiful and fragile and dangerous. Dante's entire body went rigid, waiting for my answer with the stillness of a predator before the strike. I couldn't. I shouldn't. This was madness. Falling for a man who lived in violence, who kept me like a possession, who'd watched me through cameras and stood in my doorway at night and claimed me without permission. But looking at him in the soft lamplight, seeing the vulnerability beneath his dangerous exterior, remembering how gently he touched his daughters, how fiercely he protected what he loved, how desperately he tried to keep me safe even from himself. Yes, I breathed. I do. The birthday party the next day was everything I'd hoped. The twins woke to their room transformed, streamers cascading from the ceiling, balloons clustering in corners, a table laden with presents wrapped in shimmering paper. Their screams of delight made every sleepless hour worthwhile. We spent the morning playing games I'd planned meticulously, treasure hunts, pin the tail on the unicorn, musical chairs with just the four of us taking turns. Dante participated with surprising enthusiasm, his deep laugh filling the room as Isabella tickled him mercilessly, while Julia tried to put a tiara on his head. Watching him on his knees, surrounded by giggles and chaos, something in my chest expanded painfully. This man who commanded empires and ordered deaths could also be this, playful, loving, present in a way that made my confession from last night feel less like insanity and more like inevitability. Lunch was their favorite foods: pizza cut into funny shapes, fruit arranged like flowers, juice in fancy glasses that made them feel grown up. Then came the cake. I'd spent hours making it perfect. 3 layers of vanilla and strawberry, covered in pink frosting roses, topped with sparkly candles. When I carried it out singing Happy Birthday, both girls burst into tears. Happy tears, thank God. It's so beautiful, Julia sobbed. Just like you two, I said, setting it down and kneeling between them. Make wishes, sweethearts, big ones. They closed their eyes, hands clasped together like always, and blew out the candles in unison. When they opened their eyes, they looked at their father. We wished that Emma stays forever, Isabella announced. And that you're not sad anymore, Daddy. Dante's face did something complicated. Pain and love and gratitude tangling together. He pulled them into his arms, burying his face in their hair. And his shoulders shook with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. I started to move away, give them privacy, but his hand shot out and caught my wrist. He pulled me into the embrace, and suddenly I was surrounded by Castellanos. 2 small bodies pressed against me, and one large, dangerous man whose arms wrapped around all of us like we were the only things keeping him anchored to the earth. You're already forever, he murmured against my hair, so softly only I could hear. You've been forever since the moment I saw you making my daughters laugh. There's no universe where I let you go, Emma. None. The afternoon passed in a blur of joy. The twins opened presents, art supplies, books, dolls that they actually wanted to play with because they'd rediscovered how. They insisted I open gifts too, confused about why I wouldn't have presents on their birthday. Because it's your special day. You made it special, Julia insisted. So you get presents too. Dante disappeared briefly and returned with a box wrapped in silver paper. From me, he said. His eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my hands shake as I opened it. Inside was a necklace. Delicate gold with a pendant shaped like a bird in flight. Simple. Elegant. Clearly expensive, but not ostentatious. So you never forget you have wings, he said quietly. Even if you choose to stay in this cage with me. The twins insisted he put it on me. His fingers brushed my neck as he fastened the clasp, and the intimacy of the gesture made my entire body flush with heat. Beautiful, he murmured. And I wasn't sure if he meant the necklace. As evening approached and the twins grew tired from excitement, we settled on the couch, girls between us, drooping against our sides. A movie played on the screen, but none of us were really watching. Best birthday ever, Isabella yawned. Ever, Julia agreed. Dante's hand found mine across their sleeping bodies. His fingers laced through mine, and the gesture felt more intimate than a kiss, a promise, a claim, an acknowledgement of everything unspoken between us. Thank you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. For giving them this, for giving me this. They deserve happiness. So do you, Piccola. His thumb traced circles on my palm. And I'm selfish enough to want to be the one who provides it, even though I'm the least qualified man in the world for the job. Maybe that's not your decision to make. His smile was slow, dangerous. Are you saying you choose this? Choose me? Even knowing what I am, what I've done, what being mine means. I looked at his daughters sleeping peacefully, at the decorations we'd created together, at the life I'd somehow built in this beautiful, dangerous fortress, at the man who watched me like I was air and water and salvation all at once. I'm saying I've already chosen, I whispered. I chose the moment I stayed. I just didn't realize it until now. His eyes darkened, blazed with something possessive and tender, and absolutely devastating. Then there's something you need to know, about why you're really here, about what happened to make me so desperate to keep you. Before he could continue, his phone buzzed. All 3 of them, simultaneously. His face went hard. Fuck, he breathed, reading the messages. Marco needs me. There's a situation. Dante. Tonight, he promised, standing carefully to avoid waking the girls. After they're asleep, come to my room. 3rd floor, east corner. I'll tell you everything. He leaned down, and his lips brushed my forehead in a gesture that had become familiar, addictive, and then I'm going to make you understand exactly what being mine means. No more distance, Emma. No more protecting you from the inevitable. Tonight you become mine in every way that matters." He left, and I sat there trembling, holding his sleeping daughters, wearing his necklace, carrying his promise like a brand on my skin. Tonight everything would change. I just didn't realize how completely. The twins went down easily, exhausted from their perfect day. I tucked them in, kissed their foreheads, and stood in the doorway watching them sleep. Two small miracles who'd somehow led me into the heart of a storm I was no longer sure I wanted to escape. The necklace Dante gave me felt warm against my skin, a reminder of his promise, his claim, his confession that tonight would change everything. I should have been terrified, should have been planning escape routes and rational arguments for why getting involved with a mafia boss was insanity wrapped in expensive suits and dangerous smiles. Instead, I showered and changed into a simple dress, soft gray, reaching my knees, nothing seductive but somehow feeling more intimate than anything I'd ever worn. Because I was choosing this, walking into his room with open eyes, full knowledge of what he was and what it meant to be his. The third floor was territory I'd never explored. His domain, private and guarded and off-limits to everyone except those he explicitly allowed. 2 guards stood outside his door. They nodded as I approached, expected, clearly informed of my arrival. One opened the door without a word, and I stepped into Dante Castellano's inner sanctum. The room was masculine elegance, dark woods, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate's grounds, a massive bed with black silk sheets that made my breath hitch. But what caught my attention was the wall of photographs. His wife, beautiful, dark-haired, laughing in image after image, holding newborn twins, dancing at what must have been their wedding, looking at the camera, at Dante behind it, with love so pure it hurt to witness. And beside those photos, recent ones, the twins playing, the twins laughing, the twins with me. I'd been cataloged, documented, woven into the visual narrative of his family without even realizing it. "She would have liked you," I spun. Dante stood in the doorway to an adjoining bathroom, wearing only black pants, his chest bare and revealing what his suits always hid, scars crisscrossing his torso like a roadmap of violence survived. Each one told a story of pain, of battles fought, of a life lived on the knife's edge of death. He was devastatingly beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "Your wife," I said softly, turning back to the photographs. "She was lovely. She was everything good in my world." He moved closer, and I felt his presence like heat against my back. "Sophia. We met when I was 25, her 23. She was a nurse at a hospital where one of my men was being treated. She saw me, really saw me, and somehow decided I was worth saving." His hand came up, fingers ghosting along my shoulder. "She knew what I was, what I did, and she loved me anyway, tried to be the light to my darkness." "What happened to her?" I turned to face him, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke me. Betrayal from within my own organization. A man I trusted, my cousin Vittorio, wanted control of the family business. He couldn't challenge me directly. I was too strong, too protected. So he went after my weakness, his jaw clenched. Sophia was driving the girls to school. He tampered with her brakes. The car went off a bridge into the river. Horror flooded through me. The twins were pulled from the wreckage by first responders. Sophia drowned, making sure they got out first. She saved them and sacrificed herself. His voice cracked. I wasn't there. I was in a meeting, making deals, expanding territory. And my wife died alone in freezing water because I couldn't protect her from my own blood. Tears streamed down my face. "Dante, that's not..." "It is." His hands cupped my face, thumbs wiping away tears with devastating gentleness. "I killed her by being what I am, by loving her and making her a target, and then I failed my daughters by drowning in grief so deep I forgot they were drowning too." His forehead lowered to mine, "Until you walked into that playroom and reminded me, that life could still have light in it. Is that why you kept me? Guilt? Trying to replace..." "No." Fierce, Absolute. You're not a replacement, Emma. You're not Sophia reborn, or some twisted attempt to recreate what I lost. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my face up to meet his burning gaze. You're something entirely your own. You walked into my darkness and made flowers grow. You looked at my broken daughters and saw treasures worth cherishing. You've lived here for weeks, surrounded by violence and danger, and you haven't run, haven't demanded to leave. You've just... His voice broke. You've just stayed, and made everything better by existing in my space. I stayed because I fell in love with them. I whispered. And then I made the mistake of falling in love with you. His breath stopped. His entire body went rigid. Say that again. I love you. The words came easier the second time. Truth I'd been fighting since the moment he stood in that playroom doorway and looked at me like I held the sun in my hands. I love you, Dante Castellano, even knowing you're dangerous. Even knowing you've killed and hurt and built an empire on darkness. I love the way you hold your daughters. The way you watch me like I'm precious. The way you stand in my doorway at night. Because you can't stay away, but you're trying to protect me from yourself. My hands rose to his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath scarred skin. I love you, and I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing to stay in this beautiful cage because being here with you feels more like freedom than anything I've ever known. His kiss was inevitable, devastating, claiming. His mouth crashed against mine with desperate hunger, hands tangling in my hair, pulling me against his body with bruising force. I opened for him, and his tongue swept in, tasting, exploring, conquering. The kiss was everything he'd been holding back. Possession and need, and barely controlled violence, transformed into passion that set my entire body on fire. I kissed him back with equal desperation, my hands sliding up his chest, feeling scars and muscle and the rapid beat of his heart. He groaned into my mouth, the sound rough and broken, and suddenly we were moving. He walked me backward until my legs hit the bed, and we tumbled onto silk sheets in a tangle of limbs and hunger and need too long denied. Emma, he breathed against my lips, my jaw, my throat. My Emma. Mine. Each word was punctuated with kisses that scorched my skin. His hands mapped my body with reverent possession. Waist, hips, thighs, claiming every inch. Say it again. Say you're mine. Yours. I gasped, as his mouth found the hollow of my throat. I'm yours, Dante. His control shattered. He kissed me like a drowning man finding air, like I was salvation and damnation wrapped in flesh, like he'd die if he stopped touching me. And I met him with equal fervor, matching his intensity, showing him without words that I wasn't fragile, wasn't something to be protected from his passion. We shed clothes with frantic hands, my dress hitting the floor, his pants following. When skin met skin, we both groaned at the electric contact. He rolled us so I was beneath him, his weight pressing me into the mattress, his body caging mine in a way that should have felt trapping but instead felt like safety. I'll never let you go, he murmured, his lips trailing down my collarbone. Never, Emma. You understand? This isn't temporary. This isn't casual. The moment I make you mine completely, you're bound to me forever. My wife in everything but legal paperwork. The mother of my children, the light in my darkness, mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to keep. Yes, I breathed, arching into him. Yes to all of it. Make me yours, Dante, completely. And he did. He claimed me with a tenderness that belied his dangerous nature, worshipping my body with hands and mouth, and murmured Italian endearments that sounded like prayers. When we finally joined, when he made me his in the most fundamental way, the intensity of it broke something open inside both of us. We moved together in perfect synchronization, building toward something that felt bigger than physical pleasure. This was connection, completion. Two broken pieces finding a way to fit together despite all the reasons they shouldn't. When I shattered, his name on my lips, he followed immediately, burying his face in my neck, his hands gripping my hips with bruising force, his body shuddering with the force of his release. We lay tangled together afterward, hearts racing, skin slick with sweat, and I'd never felt more complete in my life. I need to tell you something, he said quietly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. About Vittorio. I tensed, sensing this was the truth he'd promised earlier. The attack 2 weeks ago, that was him trying to get to me through you. Through the twins. He's been watching the estate, cataloging everyone I care about. He knows you're important to me now. Knows that hurting you would destroy me worse than Sophia's death did. Fear laced through the post-orgasmic bliss. So I've made myself a target. You became a target the moment I decided you were mine. His arms tightened around me. But here's what Vittorio doesn't understand. Sophia died because I was too confident in my security, too certain my enemies would follow old rules. I've learned since then. I've become harder, more ruthless, more willing to burn the world for what's mine. He tilted my face up to meet his fierce gaze. I've spent the last 2 weeks hunting him, dismantling his organization piece by piece. Tomorrow, I end him. Permanently. And then you and my daughters will be safe. Tomorrow? I've tracked him to a warehouse across the city. I'm bringing 50 of my best men. We're going to end this war he started, and I'm going to make sure he never threatens my family again. His thumb traced my lower lip. And then I'm coming home to you. And we're going to build a life together. A real one. You, me, the twins. Maybe more children someday if you want them. A future that Sophia would have wanted for me instead of the half-life I've been living. Tears burned my eyes. What if something happens to you? It won't. Absolute certainty. I have too much to live for now. You made me remember why survival matters, why winning matters, why coming home matters. He kissed me softly. I love you, Emma Rossi. I've loved you since you taught my daughters how to play, since you sang them their mother's lullaby, since you looked at me without fear and saw someone worth saving. I love you too, I whispered. Come back to me. Always, Piccola. Always. I woke the next morning in his bed, surrounded by his scent, wearing one of his shirts. He was gone, left before dawn with Marco and an army of men to finish the war that had been brewing since his wife's murder. The twins found me in his room and didn't even question it, just crawled into bed with me like this was normal, natural, how things had always been meant to be. We spent the day playing, but my mind was elsewhere, with Dante. Praying he'd keep his promise, praying he'd come home. Evening came. Then night. Still no word. At midnight, I heard vehicles, running footsteps, voices shouting orders. I raced to the window, heart in my throat, and saw SUVs pulling up, men emerging. And in the center of it all, Dante. Alive. Walking. Covered in blood that hopefully wasn't his. I ran. Down 3 flights of stairs, through hallways, past startled guards. I burst through the front door just as he was climbing the steps, and he looked up. His face transformed. The cold killer's mask shattered, replaced with raw relief and love so intense it stopped my breath. I threw myself into his arms, and he caught me, lifting me off my feet, burying his face in my hair. It's done, he murmured. Vittorio is dead. His organization is destroyed. My daughters are safe. You're safe. It's over, Emma. It's finally over. I was crying, clinging to him, feeling his solid weight and warmth, and the absolute certainty that he'd kept his promise. I told you I'd come back, he said, pulling back to cup my face. I told you I have too much to live for. You, the twins, our future together. His smile was tired but genuine, the first real smile I'd ever seen from him. Marry me, Piccola. Not someday. Soon. Make it legal. Make it permanent. Become Emma Castellano and help me raise my daughters and fill this house with life instead of ghosts. Yes, I sobbed. Yes, yes, yes. He kissed me there on the front steps, surrounded by his men, covered in the evidence of violence he'd committed to keep us safe. And it should have been wrong. Should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. 6 months later, the wedding was small. Just family. The twins in matching flower girl dresses, Marco as best man, Mrs. Kovac dabbing tears from her eyes. We married in the estate's garden on a perfect spring day, and when Dante slid the ring on my finger, his hands were steady. Sure, no longer haunted by the ghosts he'd carried for too long. The twins called me Mama now, tentatively at first, then with increasing confidence. I never tried to replace Sophia. Her photographs still graced the walls, and we talked about her often, keeping her memory alive, but I'd carved out my own space in their hearts and their lives. Dante was different too, still dangerous, still the head of a criminal empire. But he smiled more, laughed with his daughters, came home every night to a house filled with warmth instead of silence. We were creating something new from the ashes of tragedy. Not perfect, never perfect, but real, honest. Built on a foundation of love that had survived darkness and emerged stronger. I'd come to this mansion to be invisible, to scrub floors and earn money and survive. Instead, I'd found a family, a purpose, a love that consumed and protected and completed me. I'd found my home in the arms of a monster who'd learned to be a man again, and every night, when he held me close and whispered mine against my skin, I whispered back, yours, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Because sometimes the most dangerous cages become the safest havens. And sometimes the darkest men carry the brightest love. I was Emma Castellano now, wife, mother, the light in Dante's darkness. And I'd never been more complete in my life.